Hi, Joy. Welcome to Struggle to Strength.
Hi, Mary Beth. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's wonderful to have you with me. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and then we will jump into our discussion topic today. So, in case you don't know me, my name is Mary Beth Simone, and I am the founder of Niche Partnership Consulting. I started this business as the result of a personal struggle that I managed to turn into an opportunity. And through this platform, I aim to share my guests' struggle to strength stories in hopes that it will help you, the audience, connect the dots in your struggle to strength stories. So, Joy, welcome and thank you for joining us to share your story about how you found strength in self care while caring for your mother. Before we dive in, would you tell us a little bit about your background and your business, your professional life?
Sure. So I have a storied background, as I'm sure a lot of folks have. I started out my career in social justice policy advocacy work. So I was a little advocate with small nonprofits working on access to essential medicines work and issues. So I've always been very passionate about making the world a better place and gravitated to organizations that do that. And in more recent years, I've taken that work to a more micro level in working with individuals to help them to make their life better through personal development as a coach. So I'm an executive coach and a storytelling coach as well. And I also work in the field of organizational development. So there's a lot of transformation and leadership development work that I do one on one as well as in groups, and storytelling and speaking work that I do with different organizations as well. And one of the ones who we met through Speaking Your Brand is another avenue through which I do storytelling and speaking work. So getting to do a lot of things that I'm really passionate about and helping people to transform and really transform using and through their stories.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we met through Speaking Your Brand, and I see that we have Diane Diaz with us from Speaking Your Brand. Good to see you, Diane. Thanks for putting a comment in. If anyone else is with us live, feel free to drop an emoji or a message in the comment box. If you have any questions, throw them in there, and I will bring them to Joy's attention so that we can get her insights on any questions that you might have. So, Joy, can you take us back to 2014 and tell us what was going on in your personal life and professional life when you decided to leave your job?
Yeah, so it was a place that I think a lot of people are probably familiar with. I had been working in this nonprofit for about almost 3 years, and I had a day that felt like deja vu to me. My boss, I was working in the policy work I was working with online privacy protection for consumer advocates. So we used to get very technical and go to a lot of different stakeholder meetings. And I just had a day where my boss wasn't going to be available for a meeting. He asked me to go, and I went, and it was at that meeting that I had this feeling of deja vu. And I projected myself out 10 years, and I said, if in 10 years I'm still here doing the same type of work, how am I going to feel? And this intense feeling of dread came over me, and I was just like, I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. Maybe I could do this for another day or two, but when I think that this could go on for years, I knew I had to get out. So I made the decision then that I was going to quit and go out to figure out how I could work in my area of strength and get paid to be myself, because I felt like that was what my boss was doing. He was very passionate and engaged with what he did and added so much value. And I wanted to experience that and be able to show up in the world in that way. And so this was, middle of 2014. So I started planning, financially planning to leave. And also, I gave him a lot of notice. I gave him 3 months notice. So I helped him to find my replacement. So it was just this whole process of really getting geared up and really getting excited about leaving, because I was excited about going on this journey. So I think I probably was like the happiest person to quit a job, because I was so excited. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew that what I was doing was, I was done with it. It was done. And so that was sort of the setup for towards the end of that year when my mom, traveled to and was traveling to the States, and she hadn't been well for a little bit. And so her sister, her older sister said, just come and, spend some time here, and, let's just sort of see how we can help, and see what's going on. And so at that time, we didn't know that there was anything really seriously wrong diagnosis wise. So, she came and she arrived, I think, a couple of weeks before I was officially going to truly, quit my role. And almost as soon as she arrived, it was, you know, she started to decline and feel more ill and sick. I took her down to North Carolina to be with her sister. And from the first appointment that she got to meet with the doctor, they were like, run, don't walk to the hospital, like something is really wrong. And that was when we got the diagnosis that you know, she likely had a colon cancer. She got a colon cancer diagnosis within weeks. And so I just quit my job and we get
Yeah.
this diagnosis and it's like, okay, this is what 2014 is ending like and what 2015 is going to look like.
Yeah. And so I see we have Sleeta with us too. Hi, Sleeta. And so, Joy, I'm just curious, when you hear colon cancer, like what were your first impressions of your mom's diagnosis, what that was going to mean for you? And then can you talk us through, what you expected to happen?
Yeah, so it was a couple of weeks before they confirmed that it was that. But the first initial moment was I remember being in the hospital with her and the doctor coming in because they been doing scans and been doing tests for a couple of weeks. And he walks in and he says, there's blockage. We see something and we don't know what it is, but you definitely need surgery. And they sort of alluded that it was likely cancer, but they didn't confirm for a couple of weeks. But in that moment, we already knew that there's something here. And I think I sort of went numb and was very much in function mode. I've always been a person who, when I'm anxious, I want order, and so I went into, okay, what do I need to do? Getting close together, informing the family. I was the only one of my siblings who was here in the States. My aunt was around, but my dad wasn't around, and my older siblings weren't around. They're back home in Sierra Leone. So it was a moment of like, okay, inform them, make sure they have the updated information. What is the doctor saying? So I became like the very clear, succinct relayer of medical information person and making sure all different things and stuff was happening. But I wasn't processing right in the moment what was happening and what could possibly happen. I just didn't even want to think about it. And I know my mom was beginning to feel anxious, and I was just sort of like very much of the mind of one step at a time. Let's sort of sort out what we need to have happen next. And mind you, I'm still trying to start winding down at my job, and so I just got into hyper function, write the notes, do the next thing mode. Yeah,
Yeah, like
that's
the
my
classic
reaction.
organizer and yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes, yeah, that was my immediate go-to reaction because it was the only way that I could reclaim some sense of order into what I felt was about to be total chaos
Yeah.
in a sense. And I think that more than more than some probably horrible, scary things in life, what I fear most is chaos. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I'm really scared of chaos. So,
So as your mother started going through this process, what
mhm.
role did you play in her, like, immediate care?
Yeah, so because I was states away. I live in DC, and she was in North Carolina with her sister, who we couldn't have gone through this without her older sister, who was absolutely amazing and played the primary caretaker role. And so the blessing of me leaving my job was that I soon after got a consultancy. And so I was then remote. So I was starting a project and working remotely, and so I was able to spend a lot of time going down and commuting down while I was also some of the work required that I be in DC, but I got to spend a lot of time. Sometimes I would spend a week at a time, sometimes I could go down, and drive them to and from, appointments when I could, or do shopping and, do, like, some cleaning around and just be an additional support to my aunt, and also obviously to my mom, while she was going through chemotherapy and the different surgeries, that she had, 'cause she had 2 separate surgeries. And so I I was, I would say, a secondary caretaker, but also needing to be there emotionally, through calls, and just, being present as much as possible was 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 my role. And I always tell people, like, cancer is brutal. It is like absolutely a horrendous disease in and out of itself, and the treatment too. And so I really
Yeah.
hope that there can be a lot more that can be done to improve what people have to go through to survive and thrive and stay alive from it. It's horrible to watch. I can't imagine going through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, so it sounds like you had a lot of demands from a work perspective and travel, and then
Yeah,
just emotionally what was happening. Um,
yeah.
so what did it look like when you started to realize that your self-care and your health was being impacted by what you were experiencing?
Yeah, so it was because it was such a I don't know if I would disjointed is not the word I'm looking for. It was such a strange time because I'd been so happy just before getting this news. I'd been so excited about my life and the choice that I'd made. And then I got this consultancy, and then, different things were happening. Yes, I was in a bit of a limbo career-wise, but I was in a personally very exciting time of my life. And then my mom was ill and going through all that she was going through, and I wanted to be there and to be a support. And I one of the days that I wasn't there. There are two separate things that stick out in my mind. There was a day that as I was preparing for my project, I was back up in DC, and I'd gone shopping to buy a new wardrobe, a new professional wardrobe, to sort of like match my new consulting sort of career. And I, bought all the, skirts and tops, and I was really excited. And I remember sitting in a restaurant and talking to my friend, and just this overwhelming sense of guilt came over me. And I felt so bad for feeling excited and happy about what was happening for me in my life, because my mom was going through this, terrible time and moment. And I remember my friend saying something to the effect of, we can't be sick enough to make someone else well. You can't be sad enough to make someone else happy. And I was really struggling in that moment to reconcile the two, of how I could be there and how I could support, but still be moving forward with my own life, and enjoying it, and finding moments of joy in what was going on with me. It just sort of seemed so, like, wrong for me to be doing that. And 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 so that was a moment just of realization that this is what was happening and going on with me emotionally. And then there were other days. There was another day I, remember being down there in North Carolina and supporting my mom and my aunt, and having one day where, right from the morning, I'd woken up and gone in to check on her. We were sorting out breakfast, and I felt like I had gotten so exhausted that day, and there was so much other stuff that I needed to do, but I'd spent the whole day catering and tending to her. And then the next day, I did something different. I didn't get up and immediately go in to check on her when I woke up. I woke up a little bit earlier, and I went and I got dressed, and I had breakfast by myself. I had quiet time, had a devotional time. At the time, I had started this sort of like YouTube, channel, sort of sharing some of, like, my thoughts. It was sort of like the precursor to my podcast. And I worked on it, and I just spent some time in the morning really being quiet and just having my own joy time. And then I went in to check on her, and then did this whole, then I was fully able to be present and available. And it was such a different feel and such a shift for me. And I was just like, oh, this is so key. This is so important, because it just brought the levels of anxiety and even, like, resentment, and just challenge down because I felt I'd gotten a good chunk of me in. I like my tank was full. And so I then at that point I was like, oh, this is not just about me being selfish or taking care of myself. This is a responsibility for anyone who is caretaking for whatever reason with someone else. Like it is an absolute imperative. It's absolutely the responsible thing to do to make sure that you're spiritually, emotionally, physically taken care of first. You need to like take your bath, brush your teeth, eat your breakfast, have your moment, have your all of your stuff first before you're taking care of anyone else. And it changed and shifted everything about how I experienced that whole journey after that.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is such a monumental realization. Um, and it definitely resonates for me. And even in the context of a daughter taking care of a mother, I feel like there is a certain bond there. That when I was taking care of my mother, I could actually feel an energy transfer, and not just with her, but with other people who I took care of, where I would see them start to light up and be more energized, and I would just start to just feel more tired, like in that time of being
Mhm.
with them. And I was like, oh wow, it's so clear about how we do have to take care of ourselves so that we can show up, because it's such a demanding um, role to be a caregiver. So it is important that we take care of our reserves so that we don't become so depleted in the
Yeah,
exchange.
yeah. And I think there's something also to being careful about completely disempowering those who we're caring for, even if they're asking for it. Like, I think I had moments where I had to, in a way, sort of challenge my mom and remind her that there were still things that she could do for herself, even if she had to do it a little bit slower, even if she needed to take her time with it. I saw that it was important for her to still be engaged in some way, even in her own care, and not to sort of you know, throw all her caretaking onto others. And it was important for I think our relationship and for her to still be present in that even as it was challenging. So even as we're caretaking, we need to be mindful of not just of our energy, but of still maintaining healthy boundaries when you're being compassionate and being there and being present with others to be there as a support, but not feeling like that help is not doing everything for someone, even someone who is, you know, sick or ill. Like where there are moments where they can be still powerful and empowered in their life, making sure that they take and occupy that space and reminding them of that is important.
Yeah, that's an excellent, excellent point. Um, and so, what other lessons have you taken from that experience that have impacted your approach to life, personally, professionally?
Yeah, it's really been about being mindful about how much space you're taking up in caretaking. I think it's a delicate balance because I think that especially if I'm talking about women, we have this challenge about space. Like we we have spaces where we tend to shrink and sort of, struggle to be present and struggle to bring our voice and struggle to show up. But I think caretaking is not one of them. I think caretaking, we're like, okay, I got this. This is, we tend to be socialized to take up a lot of room and space there to be really very vocal, to be what I call violently helpful. you know, just like, here, I'm here to help you. I'm going to help you. You're going to be good. I'm going to fix you up. And so I think I think there's a lot of nuance that I sort of learned about like where you take up space and how you're helpful and when to stand back and when to occupy, just being a little bit more dynamic and intentional about how I'm showing up with other folks. And so in during that time I learned a lot about over functioning and just sort of realizing that that was my role, that had tended to be my role in the family, to be someone who was over functioning. And I learned that the root of that for me was a lot of anxiety, and sort of like that was how I was managing my own anxiety, and it's still like a life lesson that I'm sort of like learning, and just being realizing that when things get chaotic, I feel anxious, and learning how to just be to lean into that, and know when, okay, it's fine to do something here, or like, oh, you're being a bit too controlling, but understanding that the root of that is like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable and anxious right now, and that's why I'm getting very organized and very orderly. you know
And my house
yeah.
is clean, and I've done all the grocery shopping, and
Yes, yeah, and
would you like
so
a fresh loaf of bread with that?
yes, yes, exactly. So it's been a good lesson, I think, really just about being much more aware about what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way, and what tools
Yeah,
I'm using to resolve those feelings, and sort of like, talking myself off the ledge a little bit more about certain things, and just letting other people participate and be part of my life, and also be part of their own lives as well. And so it's being willing to be in a little bit more of a dance with things and people in life.
yeah. Well, I'm grateful for this conversation because you're helping me connect the dots to my behaviors when I'm in a chaotic or caregiving situation. I'm seeing much more clearly
Yes,
the things that I do now to deal with that anxiety, as you're mentioning.
yeah.
So, what advice would you have for women who are in the midst of caring for a loved one now and ignoring their own self care?
Yeah, it's critical. It's non-negotiable. You absolutely have to. It's not a nice to have. If you really care about the people who you say you're trying to care for, they absolutely need you to take care of yourself first. That's the key, the critical point first. You need to do it first. Like, folks often think, yeah, yeah, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. I'll get to it after. It's like, no, 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 no. You have to do it first. You need to give yourself that space, the breaks. You need to give yourself the physical, emotional, all the nutrition, the sleep, all the things that you need, and even ask let that person know, like, I'm not coming in the morning at this time. I'm gonna, I have to do this thing first, and then I'll be there to attend to you. Even if you have to articulate that so that they can adjust and know that this is sort of what the order of the day is, that it needs to be. You have to do it. It's You're going to burn out. You're not going to be able to be there for them the way that you want to be, and God forbid you get sick, you know,
Yeah,
from being this sort of like overextended caretaker.
right.
And your life matters. Like, even in this moment, your joy also matters. And sort of like that thing of like, you can't be unhappy enough to make someone else happy, or sick enough to make someone else well. It's just not possible. You're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to have, great things happen for you, even in the midst of this, dark time, in someone who you love. You don't have to sort of also, go down to the depths of the doldrums with them. That's not love. I think that we feel like, me showing you love is me going, with you all the dark places that you're at, and it's like, that's not what it is. You still have your life, and you still have a responsibility and every right to still be joyful and having good things happen to you, even as you caretake.
That's a really good point, Joy. And I think that for so many of us, it is a challenge when there's something bad going on over here or something challenging going on. And we are having great things happen personally to
Mhm.
like walk that line and to do that dance between those emotions and to give space for the happy parts of our life that are happening right alongside the challenging and sad parts of our life.
Yeah, because life is all of it, and so life can take it, and we can have all of those things and all of those experiences all at the same time, and so we should fully embrace it, rather than trying to narrow and siphon off parts of our lives.
Yeah, yeah. And so how is your mom today?
Oh, yes, a very important part of the story. She's doing well. She is many years, I think 5 or 6 years on. She had, we they caught it very early. She But, definitely, folks should do their screenings and get checked, but she had, amazingly, a very physical response. She was feeling very sick, but it was very early on. So it's almost like immediately, I guess, once the first cell started dividing, she started feeling sick. I don't know, like, but she was very early, even once they did like surgery and even the chemo was just, to be extra cautious. But she's been cancer free for years now and has bounced back and is doing really well, health wise. And so we're really grateful, for all the things that happened for her to get that early diagnosis and early treatment and early care. Um, because as folks know, it, colon cancer is very can be very silent, and once usually by the time folks find it, it's too late. And so that was something that the doctor said to us. They're like, you're definitely really, really lucky. We usually don't get catch it this early and it had the ability to respond this way. So she's doing great.
That's awesome. Well, good for her that her body, gave her signals so
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah,
Happy for her.
yeah.
So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your business, and what you're focused on now, and if you're promoting anything in your
Mhm.
business.
Yeah. So my a lot of what my business came out of the long journey from that year from 2014. Like, so if I shared, I asked that question, what would it look like for me to get paid to be myself? And on that journey, I went on to be a coach, but then sort of discovered this this amazing thing about how creating is the secret to being paid to be yourself. Creating with your gifts, creating a product, a service, or an experience or a project is how people stand apart in work. And so sort of like my phrase is like your work is not your job or your career, it's what you create. And so that's what I use my podcast, Reframe to Create, to share, and as well as my business, to share with professionals to help them to get out of the productivity mindset into the creating mindset so that they can create with their gifts and have an opportunity to have a completely different type of work transformation. So I work with individuals who are interested in developing their own signature creation that'll help them stand apart in work, or their story brand, which is the story that they'll tell that is of their story, of their signature creation, and what they're here to share and offer and create in the world so that we can experience work in a completely different way that's fulfilling, but also us making our unique contribution to the world. So that's what I'm doing these days, spreading that message, through their podcast, looking for other opportunities to share that, as well as coaching folks, one on one, who are interested in making that a reality for themselves.
That's awesome. And I don't know if you're listening now, if you can tell, but I will tell you for sure that Joy is wonderful to work with. I have worked with her as a coach in Speaking Your Brand and as a participant in Speaking Your Brand. So wonderful, wonderful person. And Salita says that that's awesome to hear about your mom. So
Yes,
I'm so
thank you,
excited.
Salita. Yes,
Yeah.
really great news.
And what is the best way for people to connect with you if they would like to
Sure.
learn more?
So they can check out my website, reframetocreate.com, or send me an email at joy@reframetocreate.com if you want to hear more about some of the services that I offer. And I'm always yucking it up on LinkedIn. That's where I sort of live online, social media wise. So would love to hear from folks and chat with folks and connect. And but I really appreciate people following and listening to the podcast. I share Reframe to Create. I share lots of my stories there and give people a taste of what working on their storytelling can do for them as they go on this journey to create wonderful things in the world and tell their story.
And I'll put the links to your podcast and your website on LinkedIn in case anyone wants to connect with you there.
Wonderful.
All right, Joy. Well, thank you so much. And Diane says, yes, Joy is amazing and a great storyteller. Yes, she
Thank you,
is,
Diane.
Diane.
Thank you.
Uh, Thanks for joining me today,
Thank you
Joy.
so much for having me, Mary Beth. I really appreciate this opportunity to share and, and remember this. And I hope all the caretakers out there, will start taking care of themselves.
I feel like your story resonates with so many of us. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.